Joining me now is Angelo Carusone. He's president of Media Matters for America, and they have been looking into the issue of impeachment and how Republicans actually feel about it. Angelo, welcome back to the Young Turks, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So if there's one thing I know from watching television now, impeachment is the equivalent of a coup, and the Republicans obviously would not be in favor of it. So I know that Newt Gingrich, I mean, there's no way that he would be in favor of an impeachment or participate in it, right?
Right. I mean, he's one of the people who helped corral the rest of Fox and then the right-wing media at large, and obviously Republicans, to start using that terminology. And one of the things, I mean, within a few hours after it first became real, they started doing segments on Fox News saying, take the word impeachment and replace it with the word coup. And it was only a few days before essentially everybody up and down the chain, not just at Fox, but right-wing media itself was echoing those talking points. And then that starts to filter out into more establishment types.
Do you remember Newt Gingrich calling his own efforts to impeach Bill Clinton a coup?
Definitely not. I mean, and they jumped through some pretty significant hurdles back then, to justify it. So no, I mean, there's obviously total hypocrisy here. I think the part about the use of the word coup, which actually is even more unsettling than the hypocrisy, is that it's just like the invasion part of it. The use of the terminology invasion. It's not just that they are being hypocritical and trying to flip the scripts or invalidate it, but they're actually trying to reinforce a sense of urgency because they understand that, unlike even in the 90s to an extent, but much more so now, power, in particular on the right, is being organized on what most people consider the fringes. But they're no longer the fringes because that's where power is being organized. And so when you use terminology like coup, it's not just in part to invalidate it. They're also trying to stoke their extremists because that raises the stakes for everybody, right? They're trying to scare people. I mean, that's ultimately what it boils down to, because they understand what their people are going to do when you start using terminology like that. It justifies what follows because it invalidates it in a really intense way.
Yeah, even Fox News legal analyst Judge Napolitano has said using words like that is palpably dangerous because it empowers the crazies to take physical violent action. So it has consequences. But to be fair, I mean, this is only a national security issue. The calls with Ukraine, now China, earlier the issue with Russia, whereas Bill Clinton was a really important thing about consensual sex.
That's exactly right. It was very important. And they were advocating for impeachment of Obama. I mean, they never got through with it, but it's not like the same people right now that are using the coup terminology were not advocating for impeaching President Obama. I mean, they did. They advocated for it consistently, starting a few days after he was inaugurated, all the way through the end of his presidency. The single biggest push for impeachment against Obama came in 2011. And it was, largely Fox business driven, but they were making the argument then. I mean, they sort of did a impeachment choose your own adventure. My favorite was that you could impeach him for fascism, socialism, or Obamaism. Take your choice. That was the exact sort of quote and rallying cry that they were using at the time.
So no, yeah, their efforts at impeaching Obama or trying to drive impeachment of Obama are hilarious and wonderfully hypocritical. So I want to go through some specific examples. But the one you pointed out was, yes, a particularly good one because in the Trump one, there are specific laws that he's violated. Campaign finance laws, obstruction laws, possibly all the way up to extortion, bribery, etc. And he admits some of those things that he did. You can pinpoint exact statutes that he has clearly violated. And when he came to Obama, I don't know, man, I kind of want to impeach him for Obamaism, which literally means I want to impeach him for being him. I just don't like him.
Yes.
So I would like to impeach him because I don't like him. It's amazing admission of I have no substance and I can't stand that guy because he's a Democrat, black, or whatever it was that they couldn't stand him for.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, one of the arguments that they made for impeachment was that he had, quote, a malevolent feeling, right, toward the country. And so what I appreciate about that is the same analysts that were using that exact justification for impeachment of Obama are today, so that's Tammy Bruce all the way down, are today making the argument that, well, there are technically no high crimes that have been committed here, right, with respect to Trump. It has to be an official crime. There's no law on the books against what Trump did in those phone calls. And yet at the time when it was Obama, I mean, they were quoting him for a generalized feeling of what they thought was malevolence.
Yeah, and let's note an extra layer of irony on that one. They are now supporting the guy who said America sucked and we need to make it great again. And we weren't winning. We had a bunch of loser generals, loser everything, and America was in disastrous shape. That would appear to be malevolence towards America. So
pretty strong, I would say. Yeah, I mean, he basically called us the stupid country pretty much relentlessly for a few decades, and would, in a weird sort of unsettling way, kind of relish what he thought were exploitations. So I'm not. It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't feel even. I mean, I'm used to this. I'm used to some level of hypocrisy from the right, or a high level of hypocrisy. But this is just really distinct, because in a way, it's not even like, in the past. What I think makes this so different is that when you would make a charge of hypocrisy, they would actually in some way try to argue that it wasn't hypocritical. They would, maybe really get down to some weird, fine nuance, and they would at least try. They would go through the effort of trying to defend themselves from the charge. Now they sort of just embrace it and then just add that as more fuel to the fire of owning the libs. And there's this relishing of just how hypocritical they're actually being and how little they actually care, that I think is fundamentally different about this current conversation as opposed to instances of hypocrisy in the past.
Yeah, there's a couple of different layers to it. There's like the lunatics like Michael Savage who don't bother trying to make sense. No. And then there is the trolls online who are like, yeah, we don't make sense. We own the libs. We're inside your head. We're living there rent free because you're thinking about how stupid we are. Okay.
That's exactly right. That's right. Exactly right. Yeah.
All right, if you say so. And then there's the guys like Hugh Hewitt, which are treated with great respect, right? He was hired by MSNBC, not Fox News. He was hired by MSNBC. He was on presidential debate panels, and here he is talking like a lunatic about how it's a coup and they're coming to get poor Trump. But I want to go back to the hypocrisy because there's so many wonderful instances of it. I don't want to run out of time, so I want to go through them a little bit one by one here. Apparently, Obama should have been impeached for supporting LGBTQ rights. Why?
Correct. Well, what's amazing is that he should have been impeached both before and after the Supreme Court officially ruled in favor of it. And the why, I wish I could explain to you, but there's not even a remotely compelling reason.
Yeah, he's in favor of gay rights. He thinks they should be equal citizens like the Constitution says. Let's impeach him.
Yeah.
Following the Constitution. Right. Crazy Obamaism. Yeah. He celebrated the democratic, basically revolution that happened in Egypt, which by the way, he didn't. I was on MSNBC at the time. He supported both the uprising and Mubarak. It was a classic Obama move. But so after Mubarak left, he's like, oh, they won? Yeah, Arab Spring, yes. But it's overall a good thing. I wanted him on the side of democracy. Apparently, you should be impeached for that?
You should, and there's another dark layer to that, which is actually my favorite part of one of the ways that they actually elevated his whole conversation and what they thought was his support of the uprising in Egypt, is that this was in right-wing circles and even on Fox News, they reported that they saw one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse appearing at the protests in Egypt. And that brought in a bunch of like really bizarre, crazy conspiracy theorists and far right, evangelical Christians who actually then started tying that into the idea that maybe Obama was in some way like the harbinger, that he was actually calling or in cahoots with the horsemen of the apocalypse. And like, I know that sounds completely nuts and ridiculous. Like that was literally one of the top stories on Fox Nation for a period of time during the initial uprising in Egypt. And then it helped fuel that very conspiracy, that very calls for impeachment that you referenced.
Yeah, to be fair, all four of the horsemen are definitely in violation of many statutes. And so if he was if he was going in that direction, well, I could see why they wanted to impeach. He was opposed to voter suppression. So why should we impeach someone who wants more people to vote?
Yeah, that one is one of those ones where it's like they're saying the thing out loud that they're not supposed to be saying, right? Where it's like we want to suppress people's ability to participate and vote because it's bad for us politically. And Obama is critical of those efforts, and therefore, that we have to impeach him. Obviously, there was a parallel to that, which actually Megyn Kelly was one of the principal drivers of the conversation around. Like, I'm trying to figure out like what gave this fuel and legitimacy to an extent, and it was Megyn Kelly who actually was arguing that Obama was secretly conspiring with the new Black Panthers in order to get a whole bunch of people that shouldn't vote to vote, while simultaneously suppressing white people from voting in order to. So all of those cries about opening up the vote, making sure that you were fighting voter suppression, when you sort of tied it all together, what the right-wing audience that was advocating for impeachment for that really heard was that Obama was secretly trying to use the new Black Panthers to stop them from voting.
Yeah, and prevent good white voters like Santa Claus from voting.
Correct.
By the way, the other guy who drove that particular impeachment effort was Mark Levin, who now is all over Fox News going, impeachment's crazy. You should never do impeachment. I mean, the great one, they call him. God, that's
they do. They call him
such a low bar. If that's your great one, hilarious. All right, look, there's actually tons of this. So go to MediaMatters.org. We just gave you the tip of the iceberg. They want to impeach him for everything under the sun. Now all of a sudden, impeachment is unbearable and the most extreme thing you could do. And Media Matters is excellent at covering Republican and conservative hypocrisy. So Angelo, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.